Alright, guys, before we move on, if you want to practice these questions using artificial intelligence and see what mistakes you're making, what score you are likely to get in the test, I have got a great news for you. You can practice all these questions with AI on our app, LAPT Exam Practice app, which is available on iOS and Android as well. Plus, if you want to take a full scored mock test, one free full scored mock test is available in the app, or you can register on languageacademy.com.au. The scorecard you will get with the mock test will be as similar as what you will get in the actual test, and which will make it very clear what score you are likely to get. I'll highly recommend each and every one of you to take that mock test, see what mistakes you're making, how to improve, and what other things you need to work on. Lastly, we have got our branches in Australia and in India, and we do provide online classes. If you need any help, do contact us on the numbers below. Now you can continue with the video.
Have you ever pictured a world without light? Just think how much we rely on man-made light sources in our lives. Without engineers, we wouldn't be able to live the way we do. No street lights, no TV, no computer display, no house lights. Engineers design and build all these things, and they also design, build, and run the electricity systems that power all these light sources.
A patriarchal family is one run by the father or eldest male of a household. He usually decides the duties of the women and children in the family. In this role, the patriarch solves family disputes and divides the family's wealth. The patriarch is also the spiritual leader of the family because he is thought to be the closest to the spirits of the family's ancestors.
People have used biomass energy from living things since the earliest cavemen first made wood fires for cooking or keeping warm. Biomass is organic, meaning it is made of material that comes from living organisms, such as plants and animals. The most common biomass materials used for energy are plants, wood, and waste. A simple barometric altimeter includes a sealed metal chamber, a spring, and a pointer that shows altitude in meters or feet. The chamber expands as air pressure decreases and contracts as it increases, bending the spring and moving the pointer. An altimeter can be mounted on an aircraft's instrument panel or worn on a person's wrist. The icehouse structures, of which 4 still remain intact, are located south of Sultan Kala. These large, conically domed earthen structures would have had sheets of ice built up on the ground level over the course of the winter to provide year-round ice supplies. Hydrogen will play several roles in our future. For transport, we now see several manufacturers launching cars powered by electricity produced in a hydrogen fuel cell, and this will happen even more in the near future. Fuel cell buses are also an attractive solution for public transport. Also, engineers are now even starting to consider using fuel cells and hydrogen to power trains. I could not save my work as my computer crashed. I could not save my work as my computer crashed. Acupuncture is a technique involved in traditional Chinese medicine. Acupuncture is a technique involved in traditional Chinese medicine. More females than males graduated from university last year. More females than males graduated from university last year. Student services provide help with housing and transport. Student services provide help with housing and transport. You must take 3 core and 2 elective courses this semester. You must take 3 core and 2 elective courses this semester. Parental expectations are a major cause of stress among students. Parental expectations are a major cause of stress among students.
Government policies, though tough, have been a blessing in disguise. Government policies, though tough, have been a blessing in disguise. The university is dedicated to providing quality education to all students. The university is dedicated to providing quality education to all students. All essays and seminar papers submitted must be emailed to your tutor. All essays and seminar papers submitted must be emailed to your tutor. Students must observe lab safety regulations at all times. Students must observe lab safety regulations at all times.
This course provides students with an in-depth understanding of the exciting disciplines of politics and international relations. Students will learn about the workings of political institutions in countries around the world and explore the complex field of relations between nations. Topics in governance, public policy, public administration, national security, and border control ensure that students receive a broad and current education in the range of issues which are covered under the label of politics and international relations. Students will undertake 4 compulsory units and 2 majors, one in politics and international relations, and the other in governance and policy. They will also choose an elective major from a wide choice of options, including political communication, international studies, international business, and national security studies. In addition to acquiring specialist knowledge and competencies in politics and international relations and commerce, students will graduate with a range of generic skills, such as critical thinking, enhanced communication abilities, problem solving, and strong capacities to work with others. They will also develop ethically based and socially responsible attitudes and behaviors.
In 1943, what became known as the Green Revolution began, with Mexico unable to feed its growing population, shouted for help. Within a few years, the Ford and Rockefeller Foundations founded the International Rice Research Institute in Asia, and by 1962, a new strain of rice called IR8 was feeding people all over the world. IR8 was the first really big, modified crop to make a real impact on world hunger. In 1962, the technology did not yet exist to directly manipulate the genes of plants, and so IR8 was created by carefully crossing existing varieties, selecting the best from each generation, further modifying them, and finally finding the best. Here's the power of modified crops. IR8, with no fertilizer, straight out of the box, produced 5 times the yield of traditional rice varieties. In optimal conditions, with nitrogen, it produced 10 times the yield of traditional varieties. By 1980, IR36 resisted pests and grew fast enough to allow 2 crops a year instead of just 1, doubling the yield. And by 1990, using more advanced genetic manipulation techniques, IR72 was outperforming even IR36. The Green Revolution saw worldwide crop yields explode from 1960 through 2000.
What are the organs of the body that we can breathe with? What are the organs of the body that we can breathe with? Lungs or noses? What is the legal document protecting someone's intellectual property? What is the legal document protecting someone's intellectual property? Patent. What do meter and millimeter measure, weight or length? What do meter and millimeter measure, weight or length? Length. A coworker in the same institution is a colleague or a peer. A coworker in the same institution is a colleague or a peer. Colleague. What do you call a notice of death in a newspaper? What do you call a notice of death in a newspaper? Obituary. When your bone is injured and broken, what would you say you have? When your bone is injured and broken, what would you say you have? Fracture.
I think mobile phones should not be allowed in schools. Students often misuse them for games, social media, or chatting during classes. This distracts them from learning and reduces focus. Phones can also encourage cheating in exams and copying homework. If schools want to maintain discipline and concentration, banning phones is the best option.
I understand your point, but banning completely may not be the right solution. Phones have many useful features like dictionaries, calculators, and educational apps. They can help students research quickly, learn better, and stay updated with information. Also, in emergencies, having a phone helps parents and students communicate. Instead of a ban, schools could allow phones under strict rules.
Maybe a middle path is better. Students could keep phones switched off during class hours and only use them when teachers permit. For example, in a science project, students can search data online. At other times, phones stay locked away. This way, phones can support learning without disturbing discipline.
But how do we ensure students won't secretly use them? Even if teachers make rules, students often find ways to break them. Once phones are allowed, distractions become hard to control. Many students spend hours scrolling instead of paying attention.
That's true, but we must also prepare students for the digital world. Completely banning phones is not realistic because technology is part of modern life. Instead, schools should teach digital discipline, how to use technology responsibly. This lesson will help students even after school, in college, and jobs.
Yes, digital education is important. Schools can introduce workshops on safe internet use, cybersecurity, and time management. Phones can be useful tools if handled correctly. For instance, teachers can give assignments that encourage students to use educational apps or record presentations on their phones.
I still feel that at the school level, students are too young to handle this responsibility. Maybe senior students can be allowed, but younger ones should focus only on books and classroom learning.
I agree age matters. Rules can differ for primary, middle, and high school students. Small children don't need phones, but teenagers may benefit from controlled use.
So the solution seems clear. Phones should not be banned completely, but strict guidelines must be followed. Controlled and purposeful use can help education, while misuse must be stopped.
I believe homework should be abolished. Students already spend 6 to 7 hours in school studying. After that, they deserve time to rest, play, and spend with family. Too much homework creates stress, reduces sleep, and makes learning feel like a burden. If schools focus on quality teaching during class, extra homework is unnecessary.
I disagree. Homework reinforces what is taught in class. Practice makes concepts stronger, and revision outside school improves memory. Without homework, many students may forget lessons quickly. Homework also teaches responsibility, discipline, and time management. It prepares students for future challenges.
I think both of you have valid points. Maybe homework should not be abolished completely, but reduced and made more creative. For example, instead of writing 10 pages, students can do short projects, real-life tasks, or group activities. This way, homework becomes interesting and useful rather than boring.
But many times, parents end up doing the homework for their children. This defeats the purpose. Teachers should make sure learning happens in the classroom itself, where doubts can be cleared. Home should be for relaxation and other skills like sports, hobbies, or art.
I agree parental involvement is high, but some guidance from home is good. Homework gives parents an idea of what children are learning. Instead of removing it, schools should design tasks that students can complete independently without needing too much help.
Also, homework does not need to be the same for all subjects. Some subjects like math and language require regular practice, while others like art or social studies can use projects or discussions. A balanced approach will keep students engaged.
Still, mental health must be considered. Too much homework increases anxiety and reduces enthusiasm for school. Education should be enjoyable, not exhausting.
That is why moderation is key. Teachers should assign limited but meaningful work. Instead of quantity, focus should be on quality.
So, we can agree that homework should not be completely abolished but redesigned. It should be less stressful, more practical, and encourage independent thinking.
You borrowed a book from the university library, but while reading it, you noticed that 2 pages have been torn out, but you didn't do it. What do you say to the librarian when you return the book?
You are walking up the stairs in front of your apartment and almost slip on the wet floor. You tell one of your neighbors about it. What would you say?
The first inhabitants in Australia were the ancestors of the present indigenous people. Whether or several successive waves and distinct peoples is still subject to academic debate, as is its timing. The minimum widely accepted timeframe places presence of humans in Australia at 40,000 to 43,000 years before present, while the others is 60,000 to 70,000 years BP. In any event, this migration was achieved during the closing stages of the Pleistocene epoch. These first migrations involved one, timing. The minimum widely present, while the upper range when sea levels were typically much lower than they are today. Repeated episodes of extended glaciation resulted in decreases of sea levels by some 100–150 meters. The continental coastline therefore extended much further out into the Timor Sea than it does today, and Australia and New Guinea formed a single landmass known as Sahul, connected by an extensive land bridge across the Arafura Sea, Gulf of Carpentaria, and Torres Strait. The ancestral Australian Aboriginal peoples were thus long established and continued to develop, diversify, and settle through much of the continent. As the sea levels again rose at the terminus of the most recent glacial period, some 10,000 years ago, the Australian continent once more became a separated landmass. However, the newly formed 150-kilometer-wide Torres Strait with its chain of islands still provided the means for cultural contact and trade between New Guinea and the northern Cape York Peninsula. During the 1970s and 1980s, around 120,000 Southern Asian refugees migrated to Australia. During those 20 years, Australia first began to adopt a policy of what Minister of Immigration A1 Graspy termed multiculturalism. In 2004-05, Australia accepted 123,000 new settlers, 19, a 40% increase over the past 10 years. The largest number of immigrants, 40,000 in 2004-05, moved to Sydney. The majority of immigrants came from Asia, led by China and India.
The heyday of the English landscape garden was the 18th century, and it stood for many things: the appreciation of natural beauty, of course, but also the idea of a civilized life, good taste, one's personal philosophy, and one's social status. Gardens also, though it is hard for us to credit, became expressions of their owners' political affiliations. Until the picturesque style emerged as part and parcel of the Romantic movement, gardens had been strictly formal, laid out with mathematical precision following the Italian and French examples. There then came a backlash against this rigid formality, led by, among others, the poet Alexander Pope. Pope and his allies argued for a more natural nature. Lord Burlington was a major figure in the landscape garden movement, and he was famously influenced by his love of the Italian architect, Andrea Palladio, along with the picturesque or romanticized landscapes of Italian classical painting. With these in mind, he scattered his gardens and parks with classical Greek and Roman temples and statues. In other words, he wanted to make the garden look like those paintings.
Readjusting to life in your own country after living abroad for some time is a little like recovering from jet lag after a long flight across several time zones. It takes time. And research indicates that after 9 years living in a foreign country you never really do readjust. Of course, things have changed, governments have come and gone, what you knew as countryside has become a suburb, new technologies have changed the way people go about their daily lives, and so on. These changes may well have been taking place in your adopted country, but they were happening while you were there, so you could adapt as you went along. Those are nor the main difficulties, however. It is in the smaller, everyday things that you might experience what is known as culture shock, although it's not really a shock. But puzzling all the same. For example, the precise way to behave at a supermarket checkout may have changed. And in ordinary conversation, the frames of reference have changed, and quite often you find that you don't really know what people are talking about, even though they are speaking your native tongue.
Well, Alex, the National Association of Realtors is at least putting the champagne on ice. The industry group says the slight rise in sales for previously owned homes shows the housing market is finally stabilizing, which is the first sign of a recovery. Now, that of course is an interpretation of the numbers, Alex, and one that's coming from an organization known for being somewhat of a cheerleader for the housing market, since its members are made up of realtors who've been losing a lot of money in the slump. Now, for a more sober view, I talked to Wellesley housing economist Carl Case, and he says the slight uptick in sales hardly offsets the fact that numbers are down 20% from the year before. I think it's really important for young people not to feel restricted in their choices and also to be aware of the choices that are available to them, and obviously the media has an incredibly important role to play in that. I think we tend to talk about science as this big kind of monolith, but of course actually it's this beautiful multifaceted thing. You know, there's almost something for everybody there. And there are so many different aspects of it. You know, somebody that's going to be attracted to working in biology might be a very different person from somebody who's attracted to engineering. I suppose it's about knowing the breadth of opportunities that are out there, and so anything that universities and broadcast media can do to make sure that those opportunities are visible. In America, there is certainly the potential for ethnic conflict. Categorically, our colossal metroplexes will not be sustainable in a post-oil future, and despite the wishes and yearnings of many people, the truth is that no combination of alternative fuels will permit us to continue living at this scale. Some of our cities will not make it. Phoenix, Tucson, and other Sunbelt cities will dry up and blow away. In Las Vegas, the excitement will be over. Other megacities will have to downscale or face extreme dysfunction. One thing that almost nobody is paying attention to: the skyscraper will not be a viable building type in our energy-scarce future. 6 or 7 stories must be the practical limit in a new age, when electric supply is not necessarily as reliable as it has been in our time. If you're like most parents, you remember sending your kindergartner off to school with a backpack bigger than they were. While your child may be able to shoulder it, students are now weighed down more than ever by these cumbersome packs. Which is why, say experts, more kids than ever before are complaining about back and neck pain. With school starting up again, a likely reason for the complaints is the heavy load they're carrying, and we're not talking about classes, with everything from textbooks to laptops to musical instruments crammed inside. Consider this. The Federal Consumer Product Safety Commission calculated that carrying a 12-pound backpack to and from school and lifting it 10 times a day for an entire school year puts a cumulative load on youngsters' bodies of 21,600 pounds, the New York Times reported, or the equivalent of 6 mid-sized cars.
Virtual reality (VR) is revolutionizing education by offering immersive learning environments that enhance engagement and comprehension. Students can now step into ancient civilizations, conduct virtual chemistry experiments, or explore the human body at the molecular level, all within a simulated environment. Such experiential learning promotes deeper understanding and helps bridge the gap between theory and practice. However, the adoption of VR in schools and universities remains limited due to financial constraints, inadequate infrastructure, and insufficient teacher training. Some educators worry that over-reliance on technology could diminish interpersonal interaction and critical thinking. Nonetheless, when integrated thoughtfully, VR can complement traditional methods rather than replace them. It encourages curiosity, supports diverse learning styles, and fosters creativity. As hardware becomes more affordable and software more accessible, VR is poised to become a vital tool in modern education, making complex ideas tangible and learning more interactive than ever before.
How would you define reasonable as it is used in law? For example, you are allowed to use reasonable force when defending yourself. It seems to depend on how serious the situation was, whether it was possible to resolve it by peaceful means, whether you were ready to try those means, and, finally, the relative strengths of those involved. Now, most men know, and they've probably grasped this from their earliest years in the school playground, that, when it comes to blows, fights don't stop until one of you is in no shape to do any damage to the other. The criteria mentioned seem a bit fuzzy to me. How can you convince a jury you were ready to try and talk your way out of it when the other person would have none of it and, besides, he was quick to land the first punch? Also, you can strike the first blow and still plead self-defense. Of course, you again have the problem of convincing people that the threat was so great that you had no alternative, apart from getting beaten up yourself. Reacting calmly and rationally to a perceived threat is not easy to do.
In small doses, stress can have quite a positive effect. It can make you feel more alive, even exhilarated. I suppose everyone has a set level at which stress becomes unbearable, at which point they cease to function properly. I suppose, too, that it's possible for someone to train themselves to be able to take higher levels of stress by repeatedly putting themselves in a stressful situation. To build up a tolerance for stress. Indeed, some jobs absolutely require this. But stress is a fact of life for all of us and, as the figures show, its effect is largely negative. Each year, about 6 million people in Britain consult their doctors because they feel stress or anxiety, and it is estimated that at least another 6 million suffer from stress-related illness but do not seek medical advice. Long working hours, fear of losing their jobs, the difficult journey to and from work and crowded trains and buses all contribute to increased levels of stress. Then there are domestic problems, such as a large mortgage on the house, children who want to drop out of school and join rock bands, not enough time to spare to be with the family.
As I mentioned last week, we're going to look today at fiction writing stories, and in particular at authors who have a reputation for creating characters in their books who are known as unreliable narrators. Now, what does that mean exactly? Well, originally, in the 19th century, it tended to simply mean that, as a reader, you just couldn't trust what the narrator of a story was telling you. This might have been because they were not giving you important information, or because they themselves as a character in their own story lacked some kind of personal insight. In later works of literature, this unreliability was used by authors more deliberately, with the direct intention of making a story more complicated for a reader to understand, perhaps a crime novel or a thriller. Nowadays, there's a lot more humor in unreliable narration, and it's often used to make first-person characters enjoyable to read about. So, what all that tells us as a general starting point is that this type of narration
This year we're planning to use a different type of assessment on this module. In the past, students were required to complete 2 long written assignments and also to do a presentation on a subject of their own choice. We have decided to ask you to write 4 shorter pieces of written coursework this year. We are also going to be more prescriptive about what you focus on in your presentation. This is because previously many students lost marks unnecessarily simply because
Let's say if I'm asking which source you often use to get information. Newspaper? Radio? TV? And the survey shows 62% of the people chose internet. You might be thinking I am going to say how important the internet is, or how quickly it has changed the world for a few years. But what if I tell you this survey is conducted on the website globallandmail.com? Our answer will be different because the people who did this survey on a website must be frequent users of internet. This sample is a biased sample. So we have to pay attention to how a survey is conducted.
Well, there are many factors that can cause one species to divide into 2. One of these is when populations get isolated from each other by something like a lake forming or forest being cleared. And there's another idea that as individuals adapt to their environment, this might have a knock-on effect on mate choice, a process called sensory drive speciation. Now this seems to occur in cichlid fish. They have shown that a female preference for either red or blue striped males only exists in clear water, where they are actually able to see. The garden behind the university is open to the public in summer. The garden behind the university is open to the public in summer. Graphs and charts allowed data more easily to be understood. Graphs and charts allowed data more easily to be understood. The essay will argue that the technology does more harm than good. The essay will argue that the technology does more harm than good. Implementation figures are expected to improve over the next few years. Implementation figures are expected to improve over the next few years.
I have scored 73 in my PTE in only 10 days.
I achieved my desired score just in 20 days.
My desired score.
Desired PTE score.
Desired score. Desired score. Desired score.
Desired score.
अपना डिजायर स्कोर लैंग्वेज एकेडमी तो अचीव किया है